When my parents planned to give my duplex to my brother's family for free, I stayed quiet. Weeks later, they drove by and saw paying renters in both units. There were three things my mom believed in more than God, potlucks, Pinterest quotes, and my older brother Ethan. She called him her first blessing, which would have sounded sweet if it had not usually been followed by calling me our little surprise. And not the good kind of surprise, like a birthday trip or a bonus check. I was the kind of surprise you get when you walk outside, already late for work, and find out your tire is flat. Growing up, I was the spare key, the backup plan, the maybe someday child, who somehow arrived after everyone had already decided what the family was supposed to look like. Ethan, on the other hand, was the plan. He was the investment. He was the heir to the family legacy, even though that legacy was basically a two-bedroom ranch house and a smoker grill my dad never cleaned. By the time Ethan was 25, he had a wife, 2 kids, and a graduation photo framed in every room of my parents' house, including the guest bathroom. I was 27, single, and fixing air conditioners in other people's houses while eating gas station burritos in mine. I was not bitter. At least, that was what I told myself. Maybe I was a little bitter. Maybe I had earned the right to be. But mostly I had accepted my role in the family story. I was hardworking, low maintenance, and occasionally mentioned in group texts whenever someone needed a spare set of hands or a pickup truck. That was why when I started saving for a property, I told no one. Not my parents, not Ethan, not even my childhood best friend Marcus. And I had once trusted Marcus with the location of my emergency pizza fund. He betrayed that secret for 3 slices of pepperoni and a can of Sprite. So clearly, history had taught me something. The truth was simple. I did not want opinions. I did not want advice. I did not want my mom asking, "Are you sure you can afford that?" I did not want my dad muttering, "You know, Ethan has always been better with money." So I stayed quiet. For 2 years, I worked overtime shifts, took side jobs on weekends, and lived like a raccoon in human form. I drove an old Chevy with no air conditioning and a trunk full of tools. I ate so many peanut butter sandwiches that I should have qualified for a loyalty program. I ignored every urge to upgrade my life. No vacations, no new truck, no fancy dinners. Every extra cent went into a savings account labeled very appropriately, "Not for Ethan." Then, one Tuesday morning, while I was repairing a busted dryer for a sweet old couple who offered me lemon cake and unsolicited life advice, I got the call. The duplex was available. It was old, sure. It needed a new fence, some drywall patched, and the front porch had what I could only describe as violent creaking energy. But the place was solid. It had good bones. 2 units, one upstairs and one downstairs. Each unit had 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, and just enough charm to attract a renter who would not ask too many questions about the ghost of water damage past. I signed the papers that Friday. The property went under my name. No co-signers, no family favors, no announcement, no speech at Sunday dinner. Just my signature, my money, and the quiet feeling that maybe I had finally built something no one could take credit for. It felt strange at first. Not bad strange, just quiet. Like I was waiting for someone to show up and tell me it did not count unless Ethan approved it. But no one came. No one said anything. No one knew. For the first time in years, silence felt like victory. I did not throw a party. I did not pop champagne. I just stood in the empty living room of Unit A, looked around at the scuffed floor and the dusty windows, and whispered to myself, "You did it, man." I sounded like I was narrating a sports documentary about middle-class plumbing success, but I meant every word. Then I got to work. I cleaned, I painted, I repaired every creaky hinge. I tightened every pipe. I patched walls, hauled junk, fixed cabinets, replaced fixtures, and learned which floorboards complained the loudest. One of the neighbors, an older guy named Lou, who smelled like coffee and wisdom, stopped by one afternoon and asked if I was the new landlord. When I told him yes, he smiled and said it was better me than the last owner because she had apparently run a cat rescue and a pottery class out of the place. My plan was simple. I would rent out the upstairs unit, live in the downstairs unit, build equity, and become the kind of landlord I wished I had in my early 20s. Responsive, chill, not the type who communicated exclusively through passive-aggressive sticky notes. For a few weeks, that was exactly what happened. I worked, fixed things, screened tenants, and felt the ground under my feet getting steadier. Then, I got invited to family dinner. That was rare. Usually, I was treated like the +1 to Ethan's plus everything. So when my mom called and insisted I come over, I knew something was up. I was right. It was not dinner. It was a setup. The moment they brought out pie and started asking casual questions about what I had been doing lately, I felt it. My duplex, my private win, was about to become the center of a family plan I had never agreed to. And I was not wrong. Family dinner at my parents' house always had a rhythm. First came the forced hugs. My mom's hug was too tight. My dad's was too limp. Jenna, Ethan's wife, did the awkward cheek air thing, like we were European or something. Then came the appetizers no one liked, but everyone pretended to love. Deviled eggs that smelled like revenge. Shrimp cocktail that had clearly been defrosted about 30 minutes before I walked in. Then came the questions. Always the questions. My mom asked if I was still doing the tool thing while she loaded Caesar salad onto her plate like it was a personality trait. I told her I was still doing HVAC plus plumbing, electrical, and small repairs and that I was booked solid. Jenna smiled with fake amazement and said it was cute that I worked with my hands. I smiled through my molars. Ethan, meanwhile, was bragging about how his toddler had just mastered shapes and how their dog supposedly knew the difference between classical music and country music. I nodded like that was incredible. My microwave could tell time, but I chose not to compete. Eventually, my mom turned toward me with the kind of expression she used when she was casually preparing to manipulate someone. She asked if I had any big plans or new developments in my life, like she was not fishing with a net the size of Alaska. I gave the most casual shrug I could manage and said not much work had been good. I saw disappointment flicker across her face like I had failed to provide the opening she wanted. My dad cleared his throat and said Ethan and Jenna were dealing with a bit of a situation. He used the same tone someone might use to announce a natural disaster. I bit into a piece of garlic bread like it owed me money and asked what was going on. Ethan said they were kind of in between places. Their lease had ended and their new place was not ready yet. He started to say they had been thinking, but my mom cut in and said maybe they could stay with me for a little while. I paused mid-chew. Stay with me? Jenna quickly added that it would only be for a few weeks, and then she said, I had space, right? That duplex or whatever. There it was. I had not told them, I had not posted about it, I had not mentioned it in passing. There was only one way they could have known. Before I even asked, my mom told me Marcus had mentioned it. Apparently, he had said I bought a place with 2 units. I made a mental note to throttle Marcus with a rolled-up lease agreement. I asked slowly if they had simply figured Ethan's family could move in. My mom gave me that soft, guilt-laced smile she used whenever she wanted to pretend something was mutually beneficial when it was actually just a favor for the golden child. She said it would only be until their new place was ready. Then she added that I had always been independent, and it was not like I needed both units. There it was, the free rent agenda. My success had suddenly become a communal potluck, and Ethan had shown up with an empty container and a fork. I told them I already had tenants lined up. It was a lie in that exact moment, but it was a strategic lie, and I stand by it. Jenna blinked and said, that was sudden. My mom immediately played hurt and said I had not even told them I was buying, then asked why I had kept secrets. I said I figured it would not matter because Ethan usually got the announcements. The table went silent for a full 10 seconds. Ethan gave an awkward chuckle, like the joke had gone over his head, and clipped a few wires on the way down. Then he asked if there was really no room. I shook my head and told him both units were rented and the leases had been signed last week. That part became true very quickly. The next morning, I posted both listings. By Friday, I had 2 tenants at full market rate. No family, no discounts, no emotional hostage situation disguised as a temporary arrangement. The funniest part was that they had not even asked for the address. They had simply assumed they would move in like squatters with baby strollers. The best part came 2 weeks later when I found out from a mutual friend that my parents had started driving past my place on Sundays just to check. And on one of those Sundays, things became visually educational. My parents did not confront. That was not their style. They suggested, they hinted, they snooped. After I shut down the whole "let Ethan's family crash at your place rent-free" plan, and by shut down I mean I barely contained my sarcasm while saying, no, they did not blow up my phone or call me ungrateful. That would have been too direct. Instead, they activated their favorite tactic, surveillance with snacks. The first text came from Lou. He told me a white SUV had circled again, third time that week, slow rolling past the mailbox like it was hiding state secrets. At first I thought maybe it was a coincidence. Then I remembered my parents did not do coincidence. They did passive-aggressive reconnaissance with a side of judgment. The next day, Lou upped his reporting. He told me my mom had waved at him, then parked across the street and just sat there, like she was on a stakeout. He said my dad looked either bored or constipated, and he could not tell which. I peeked out the window, and sure enough, there it was. My mom's white SUV was parked across the street like a suburban submarine. No movement, no knocking. Just two retired parents trying to solve the mystery of why they were not in control of this one. What they did not know was that both units were filled. The upstairs unit had been rented to Angela, a pediatric nurse who baked on weekends and owned 6 slow cookers. She once gave me banana bread just because my toolbox looked heavy. The downstairs unit had Dennis, a divorced high school math teacher, who stress-baked and had strong opinions about grout. He paid early and offered me a slice of peach cobbler every other Thursday. I called him rent-paying Gordon Ramsay behind his back. They were not just tenants. They were the dream. Quiet, responsible, respectful. They did not ask for discounts. They did not mention Ethan. They were already better family than my actual family. Every Sunday like clockwork, my mom and dad rolled by in slow motion. My mom craned her neck like she was trying to spot wildlife. My dad squinted at the doorbell like he could hear rent checks being written. I let them look. I let them wonder. Then it happened. I was outside doing routine maintenance, patching a fence board with my earbuds in and my hoodie up, when Angela came out with her rent check. She handed me the envelope and thanked me for the quick fix, then told me I was the best landlord she had ever had. Before I could respond, a white SUV slowed to a crawl behind her. I turned. It was them. My parents sat in the car with their mouths slightly open like they had just watched a magician pull a duplex out of a hat. My mom was in the passenger seat holding a giant lemonade. My dad was driving, frowning like a man who had just realized his golden investment strategy involved a son who no longer needed him. Angela waved politely, completely unaware of the drama she had just stepped into. Then I waved too, just a little two-finger lift, with a wrench still in my hand and sweat on my brow, like a working-class ghost haunting their expectations. My mom's face changed from curious to shocked to mildly offended in less than 5 seconds. My dad said something to her, and she mouthed words I would never forget. That's him. As if I were Bigfoot or a rare bird. They did not get out of the car. They did not speak. They simply drove away slowly, like they were still hoping someone else would walk out and prove it had all been a misunderstanding. That night, I got a message in the family group chat. My mom wrote that it was a nice place and that it looked like a lot of work, then added a winky face. The passive-aggressive emoji, her preferred method of emotional warfare. I did not respond, but I did read it 3 times. Not because I was hurt, but because that one text said everything. They had seen me not just owning a place, but running it, managing it, profiting from it. And they were not proud. They were confused. In their minds, success was Ethan. It always had been. I was supposed to orbit around him, fix sinks, show up to birthday parties with tools in the back of my truck, nod along while everyone discussed his problems as if they were family emergencies. But there I was with keys, rent checks, and neighbors who actually respected me. For the first time in a long time, I did not feel invisible. I felt solid. The group chat stayed silent for about a day after my mom's winking face message. I thought maybe they were done. Maybe the drive-by revelation had shaken something loose. Maybe humility had finally found their address. Nope. By Tuesday morning, the chat lit up like a Christmas tree. Except instead of gifts, it was full of thinly veiled guilt trips, wrapped in family values and delivered with emoji bows. Ethan wrote that he had not known I had extra space and that it was kind of wild I had not mentioned it. I stared at that message for a full minute. Extra space. Like I had accidentally found a duplex in the couch cushions. My mom wrote that they had just thought I might want to support my brother while his family transitioned. Then she said I had always been so generous. That was funny because I distinctly remembered loaning Ethan $300 in 2019 and never hearing another word about it. But sure, I was the generous family ATM who had apparently forgotten to dispense lately. I typed LOL, deleted it, and stared at the screen. Then Ethan sent the cherry on top. He wrote that it was just disappointing because we were family. There it was, the family card. The trump card of guilt. The emotional blackmail used whenever logic had left the building. I did not reply. Instead, I went outside and swept the front steps of my duplex. Angela waved at me on her way to work. Dennis shouted from his window that he had left lemon bars by my door. It smelled like independence and citrus. Still, the messages kept coming. My mom wrote that this did not feel like who I was and that I had always looked out for others. Ethan wrote that it was not even about rent, that they just needed somewhere stable for a few months, and that he had thought I would understand. My mom reminded me that my brother had 2 kids and a dog, and it was not like they could just stay anywhere. My dad finally joined in and said that back in his day, families took care of each other with no questions asked. Back in his day, people also thought seatbelts were optional and asbestos was insulation, but I decided not to bring that wisdom into the chat. I muted the conversation. Internally, though, I was boiling. It was not because they asked, it was because they assumed. They assumed I would hand over the keys. They assumed my work, my hours, my skipped vacations, my old truck, my side jobs, my years of being called the other one, all of it was just available. They assumed Ethan could move in, like royalty visiting one of his estates. No one asked how I had managed to buy a duplex. No one congratulated me. No one asked what it meant to me. They did not see me as a grown man building something on his own. They saw me as a safety net with plumbing skills. So I did what any mature adult would do in my position. I posted a photo on Facebook. It was just a little something. A picture of me standing on the porch with a tool belt around my waist and coffee in my hand. The caption was simple. 1 year ago today, I signed the papers. 2 units, 0 help. Grateful. It was not petty. All right, maybe it was 12% petty. Within 10 minutes, Jenna liked the post, probably by accident. 5 minutes later, she unliked it. Classic Jenna. Then came the message I was waiting for. Not in the family group chat, but directly from Ethan. He wrote, "Wow, real mature." I sipped my coffee and did not reply. Because here was the thing. I did not need their validation. I did not need their congratulations. I definitely did not need their guilt. What I had was mine, earned quietly, built without applause, protected without apology. And for once, I was not going to explain that to anyone, especially not to the brother who never asked how I was doing unless my answer could somehow benefit him. When I say I had never been more prepared for a fake solution wrapped in guilt, I mean it. I had been dodging compromise plans since I was 8, and Ethan got the bigger slice of cake because he was older. Spoiler, he stayed older for 32 years, and I never got that slice. So when my mom called, not texted, called, I knew she was loading the cannon with, "Just hear me out." She opened with a sweet voice and asked how the house was. The house, singular, not the duplex. She was already minimizing it. I told her it was good and that it had been a busy week. She sighed, which was code for she had decided she was the reasonable one now. Then she said she knew things had gotten tense, but they had been talking, and Ethan's situation really was difficult. She knew I had said the units were rented, but maybe there was a way we could work something out. There it was again. We. The family committee that always met without me. I told her to go on purely for the sport. She suggested that Ethan and Jenna could stay with me. Not in the rented unit, in my unit. They would only need one of the bedrooms, she said. I could share the space and I could still collect rent from upstairs. I blinked. I asked if she wanted me to give up half of my own home for a family I was not told was coming. She did not miss a beat. She said it would only be temporary. Then she added that it was not like I was always there, because I worked long hours, so it would not be that disruptive. I asked if she meant it would not be disruptive to me. She paused. Then she brightened and said the kids were very well behaved. I almost choked. I had seen those kids feed Doritos to a turtle and then scream because the turtle did not clap. I told my mom slowly that this was not about being difficult. This was my space. I had worked for it. Alone. She softened her voice and switched tactics. She said she did not want this to become a wedge between me and Ethan because we had always been so close. I laughed out loud. The last time Ethan and I had been close was when he borrowed my truck to move a couch, returned it with a cracked taillight and no gas, then later sent me a Venmo request for $12 for gas he had not put in. Still, my mom pressed on. She asked if I remembered the year Ethan shared his birthday cake with me because he was my brother. I told her that was in 2003, and he had dropped the cake and I had licked frosting off the floor. She said memories brightly, like I had just complimented the family. Then came the real kicker. She said Ethan was under a lot of pressure, and it would mean the world if I could show him what family was about. There it was, the inevitable speech about how I was morally obligated to fix a problem I had not created. I let the silence stretch long enough to make her uncomfortable. Then I said she was right. I could hear her perk up. I repeated that she was right. It would mean the world for Ethan to learn what family was about, starting with respecting people's boundaries. The silence on her end went cold. Then she mumbled something about thinking it over and hung up. 10 minutes later, the family group chat pinged. My dad called me selfish. Jenna wrote that they kept to themselves and I would not even know they were there. Ethan wrote that this was why I had always felt distant, because I pushed people away. I stared at that one for a while. I pushed people away. Right. Apparently boundaries were abandonment now. What they really meant was that I was not letting them benefit from my hard work, and that made them uncomfortable. But here was the thing no one in that group chat understood. I had not built my duplex to prove anything. I had built it so I would never have to depend on people who made me feel small. And I was not about to shrink just to fit back into their expectations. After the group chat meltdown, I did not respond. I did not argue. I did not explain. I did not defend myself. I let them sit with it. Over the years, I had learned something. People who benefit from your silence will always be offended by your boundaries. That weekend, I hosted a small cookout on the back patio. Nothing flashy, just me, Angela from upstairs, and Dennis from downstairs. Angela brought root beer pulled pork sliders that could have won awards. Dennis brought a corn salad that looked like it belonged in a magazine. I brought the grill and a six-pack. It was the most relaxed I had felt in weeks. Angela laughed at one of Dennis's dry jokes about homeowners associations. I was halfway through my third slider when she handed me an envelope with her rent early again and told me not to spend it all on power tools and coffee. I grinned and told her it was too late. That envelope was not just rent, it was a reminder. I had done this. I had built something on my own. No handouts, no backup, no Ethan. Then, in the middle of the laughter, we all heard it. The distinctive slam of a familiar SUV door across the street. I turned. Sure enough, there it was, the white SUV. My parents had arrived, and Ethan was with them. All three of them stood on the sidewalk like realtors scouting their next regret. No knocking, no warning, just standing there. Angela noticed them first and leaned in to ask if I was expecting visitors. I said not even a little, then grabbed another slider like it was a defense mechanism. They did not say anything, they just stared. Dennis raised an eyebrow and asked if I wanted them to clear out. I said no, they could watch. Maybe they would learn something. It was surreal. I stood on my porch with a drink in my hand, surrounded by people who respected me, while the family who had doubted me watched like I was an exhibit. They stood there in silence, waiting for me to cave, waiting for me to wave them over, waiting for this to somehow become negotiable again. I did not move. Angela eventually waved, polite and southern. I just nodded. Not rude, not cold, just resolved. My mom looked visibly confused. My dad looked annoyed. Ethan looked like he had just realized the guest list did not include his name. Eventually, my parents got back into the SUV. Ethan lingered. He stared at the house like it owed him something. I wondered what he saw. Did he see the hours I had spent repairing drywall at midnight? The budgeting spreadsheets? The toolbox I had carried everywhere since trade school? The old Chevy with no air conditioning? The skipped vacations? The peanut butter sandwiches? Or did he only see the fact that nobody had invited him? Finally, he turned, got into the SUV, and slammed the door harder than necessary. They drove away. No wave, no words, just disappearance. Later that night, the family group chat came back to life. Ethan wrote that they were moving into an extended stay hotel and thanked me for nothing. My mom wrote that they had tried, and I had made my choice. My dad wrote that he hoped it was worth it. I stared at that last message. Hope it was worth it. As if my peace, my home, and my sanity needed a price tag. I did not reply. Instead, I stepped outside. The porch lights glowed against the shingles I had chosen, the siding I had painted, and the door I had installed. I snapped a photo of myself standing there with coffee in my hand. Then I posted it with the caption, "Worth every brick." I did not tag anyone. I did not need to. 10 minutes later, Jenna texted me privately and told me I was being cruel. I laughed. Not bitterly, not smugly. Just the deep, exhausted laugh of someone who had finally realized he did not need to explain himself anymore. 4 days passed after that. 4 beautiful, silent, drama-free days. No texts, no calls, no emoji guilt, no Ethan updates. Just normal, peaceful life. Angela gave me banana bread. Dennis fixed the lawnmower cord because, according to him, watching me struggle with it was making him itchy. I slept better than I had in weeks. Then came the knock. It was not a buzz, not a doorbell. It was firm, intentional. I opened the door slowly, expecting maybe a package or Lou returning my drill again. Instead, Ethan was standing on my porch like a kid who had been kicked out of summer camp. Behind him, I saw a minivan. It was packed tight. A pillow was stuffed against the window. Jenna sat in the passenger seat looking down at her phone. The 2 kids were in the back. One of them was eating dry cereal from a bag like it was a life sentence. Ethan said hello and tried to sound casual. Then he asked if we could talk. I leaned against the doorframe and told him we already were. He glanced back at the minivan. He said he knew things had gotten heated, that Mom had been a little extra lately, and that he had not meant to guilt me. I told him he absolutely had. He had just thought it would work. He flinched. Then he tried the next card. Exhaustion. He said they were tired. The hotel had roaches. The kids were cranky. He was doing the best he could. Then he said he had been hoping maybe we could figure something out. Even just a week, they would be out of my hair. I said, right, just 1 week. Then another. Then maybe the dog gets comfortable. Then suddenly, Jenna is redecorating my bathroom. He chuckled nervously and said that was not fair. I told him exactly, it was not. Silence stretched between us. He looked like he wanted to say more, like he expected me to break. Like if he stood there long enough, I would become the old version of myself, the one who folded just to keep the peace. Instead, I looked at him, really looked at him. This was the same brother who used to take credit for my work, the same guy who borrowed my tools, my truck, and my time without thanks, only expectation. The same one who had never once shown up when I needed help, moving, fixing, building, or carrying anything that did not benefit him. But now he needed something. Now he had shown up. Now he was finally seeing that maybe I was not the one who needed to grow up. I sighed and stepped out onto the porch, closing the door behind me. I told him I was not angry. I was tired. He asked what I was tired of. I told him I was tired of always being the fallback, the free option, the one who got told to understand when no one tried to understand me. He looked at me like he did not know who I was anymore, like he had missed a meeting where I got replaced by someone with a spine. He said I had changed. I told him no. I had just finally stopped asking for permission to have a life. Behind him, Jenna glanced over. She did not look desperate. She looked irritated. annoyed that the plan had not worked. Ethan opened his mouth again, but I cut him off. I told him there was a park 2 blocks down with clean bathrooms and shade, and that it might be good for the kids while he figured out his next step. He hesitated like he could not believe I was serious. But I was serious. For once, I was the one setting the terms, and I was not about to unlearn the freedom I had earned. He turned slowly and walked back toward the van. I did not watch them drive away. I went inside, locked the door, poured myself a glass of iced tea, and for the first time in a long time, I did not feel guilty about being the one who said no. 2 weeks passed. No knock, no text, no new messages in the family group chat. Silence. And let me tell you, it was the most peaceful silence I had ever lived in. Angela and Dennis thrived. I upgraded the porch light, my bank account got fatter, I even bought myself a ridiculously overpriced pair of noise-canceling earbuds, because I could. Then, on a Thursday, a letter arrived. Not a text, a letter, from my mom. The handwriting alone made my stomach tighten. She always curled the Y in my name too tight, like she was strangling the word you. I opened it slowly, almost laughing at how old school it felt. She wrote that they were disappointed in how things had turned out. She wrote that family meant sacrifice. She wrote that I had a chance to help my brother, and instead I had chosen pride. She wrote that she hoped one day I would realize what I had lost. I folded the note and put it in a drawer next to expired coupons and a button that had fallen off a shirt 3 years earlier. Then, I had an idea. The next day, I drove to a nearby print shop. I paid $7 and had something clean and crisp printed and framed. Then I mailed it to my parents' house. No note, no explanation. Just a photo of my duplex with the words, "Built without you." 2 days later, Jenna blocked me. Ethan removed me from the family Spotify plan. My mom sent one final message in the group chat. She told me I had made my choice and said she hoped I was proud of myself. I did not reply. But I did pin the message so that every time they opened the chat, they would see who said it. Because yes, I was proud. I was proud of every skipped vacation, every overtime shift, every ignored insult at holiday dinners, every sarcastic comment I swallowed instead of clapping back, every gas station burrito, every peanut butter sandwich, every weekend job. Every night I came home exhausted and still checked my savings account because I knew I was building a way out. They called it selfish. I called it survival. 1 year later, exactly to the day, I celebrated by repainting the front steps with Angela and Dennis. We grilled burgers, blasted music, and took a group photo on the lawn. I framed that photo and hung it in my hallway, next to the first rent check I ever earned. Right next to freedom.